Hey everyone, it's Konrad Bobilak here, CEO of Investors Prime Real Estate and best-selling international author of Australian Real Estate Investing Made Simple. Welcome to today's video. It's going to be a bit of a controversial one because what I want to talk to you about is the difference between buyer's agents or buyer's advocates versus property sourcing specialists versus real estate agents and then versus property gurus. So it's going to be controversial. It's a video that I wasn't planning to do originally, but I've been having a lot of questions from my clients about the differences between those different types of companies and other companies that exist within that framework and ecosystem of real estate investing in Australia. So sit back, relax. Welcome to today's video. Grab a coffee, grab a V drink, and enjoy the contents. By the way, I'm going to share with you some information. Some of it is controversial. Some of it will be just based on my opinion and my experience in the industry for over the last 30 years. So don't take it as gospel. These are just my opinions and my observations about the industry. If I offend anyone in the industry, don't send me emails. Well, you can. You're not going to get a reply though, or you might get a nasty reply. But this is just purely my opinion, guys. And really, it's designed not to scare you away from the industry and various parties that play a part of the industry. I just want to give you a bit of an understanding where everyone fits into the picture. What is the difference between the buyer's agents and the property sourcing specialist or property guru? What services they provide, and what do you need to understand in order to get where you want to be? Because ultimately, this whole YouTube channel is about helping investors like yourself get from A to B with the least amount of effort, maximum results in the least amount of time. So really, I just want to give you a bit of a learning curve about the industry. And I hope you enjoy the video. Before we get started, everything that I'm sharing with you today is purely just my opinion, and I'm not here to give you any financial advice. This is purely for educational purposes only. And if you do act on anything, please speak to people that have not only the credentials behind the name, but they've got the numbers in the bank account. But about myself, before we get started, a lot of people don't know this, but I'm actually a buyer's advocate as well as a property sourcing specialist. My name is Konrad Bobilak. I'm a best-selling author. I've been in real estate for a long time, over a decade. Before then in the banking and lending system, and before then in financial planning. I've also been really interested in the whole financial services sector, right down to share trading, options, crypto. I mean, I love the whole space. Property definitely is my number one priority. And because of that, I'm obviously a real estate agent. I've also got a diploma in mortgage broking, financial planning. The most important thing is that I'm a property investor myself, guys, here in Melbourne, very successful. And I've been doing it, and I'm still refinancing properties, buying more properties. So I'm actually doing exactly what I'm teaching on my YouTube channel. I'm not a theorist. I'm not an academic. I'm a person that's actually making more money out of property investing than in my job running Investors Prime Real Estate. Also, I want to thank you guys for supporting my book, Real Estate Investing Made Simple. And also, just so you know, a bit of good news, I've just finished the revised edition of Australian Property Finance Made Simple. I've added 6 new chapters to the book, so that's going to be coming out this year. I've added a whole section on buying properties through trust and controlling and leveraging wealth. So there's going to be a lot of information there. That book has gone #1 bestseller multiple times as well. I really want to thank you guys for supporting my book and buying my book through various platforms. I've sold now tens of thousands of copies, both hard editions and digital copies. So really want to thank you guys. If you want to get a copy of my book on real estate investing, jump onto realestatemade simple.com.au, and the finance book, bookonfinance.com.au, or any good bookshop, Amazon, or even eBay, and get a secondhand copy for $10. Now, let's talk about the industry, which is the Australian real estate industry, which is worth billions of dollars. And whenever you have a lot of money on the line, you're going to have the good, the bad, and the ugly in the industry. And I want to kind of I want to unpack the industry and give you a bit of a context about the main players, how real estate works, who sells real estate, who sources it, who stay away from like a Teen Arena concert, and which people to engage and listen to if you want to fast track your results. Now, there's a lot of money involved, and there's a lot of people that are very inexperienced in the industry. And this is where sometimes parts of the industry can get a bad rap. I mean, everything from conveyancers stealing deposit money from buyers, which is just a recent story that came in the paper yesterday. There was a conveyancer that stole some money from buyers, lost their license, up to real estate agents buying stock themselves and flipping it for vendors without their knowledge. I mean, this happens all the time. commissions in the industry run into the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Therefore, you're going to have always an element, that small percentage of people that just don't have a long-term vision, and they want to make a quick buck, and they will compromise their integrity, and ultimately the whole industry pays for it. Real estate agents in Australia haven't got the best reputation. There's an old joke: how do you know real estate agents lying? Because their lips are moving. So there's a lot of, I guess, people that do everything for a sale, and this is why the reputation of a real estate agent is okay to average, I would say, in Australia, and in some areas below average. And that's why the reason is because a lot of agents and a lot of property sourcing specialists will tell lies or fibs, or they'll overstate aspects of the property or the market or the vendor's reasons for selling or the area in order to get a quick sale. And this is where the greed factor comes into the equation. So I just want to do a bit of a video. I don't want to scare you about the industry, but I want to give you a bit of a context about things that are important to you, not so much as an owner-occupier, but as an investor, things that you're going to be aware of, and also things that you can take advantage of in order to grow your property portfolio, and things you need to tap into. Now, I want to talk about Australian property investing gurus, first of all, because this is the number one thing that I want to unpack before I get into the agents and the buyers advocates. And property gurus are very important. I call them gurus, but really they're experts and authors that teach people how to invest in property. And there's a lot of them out there. And I would always say my biggest influence in life has been property investment gurus, and also gurus and experts on psychology and mindset. And one of my favorite people is Jim Rohn, who always says the difference between where you are today and where you'll be in 5 years from now, we found in the quality of the books that you read, and I would add, and the people that you interact with. And so if you want to work out your income, you just show, all you got to do is add the income of your closest 5 friends and divide by 5, and you're going to get within 10% of your income. So your network determines your net wealth, which is very important. The more quality people you hang around with, you're eventually going to become successful. There's an old saying: if you hang around the barber long enough, you're eventually going to get a haircut. And if you hang around rich people long enough, eventually they're going to give you a tip on the stock or a crypto or property transaction, and you're going to benefit from that. It's just inevitable. There's an 80-20 rule when it comes to psychology and mindset, and this is the most important thing to take away from this video. And I know a lot of really successful property investors that have massive property portfolios running into the millions of dollars. Not only was I looking after them as a mortgage broker, as a specialist lender working for NAB, but I actually know them personally as friends or colleagues. And the commonality between all of them is that 80% of success is psychology and mindset. 20% is what I call specialized knowledge, the stuff you got to implement. Without the psychology and mindset, you will never be able to achieve any significant wealth through property investing. Now, what is psychology and mindset? Well, I teach this at my live events, but it has to do with how you approach money and how you view money. The biggest distinction between the rich and the poor is that the rich control assets through trust. They don't own any assets in their personal name. They leverage against asset. They use debt to buy things and consume things. They don't use their money from their job to buy consumable products, things like cars, holidays, clothing, everything. Everything they use is debt. And because debt is non-tax deductible. They also know you can't save yourself to wealth. You've got to leverage yourself to wealth. So what they do is usually they use other people's money to leverage into growth assets. The middle class and the poor people are obsessed with owning things outright in their own name. This is the biggest distinction between the rich and the poor. So poor people have an obsession with paying off one house, and then once it's paid off, they leverage against it and maybe buy an investment property, and they inevitably run out of time. And most Australians end up dead broke at 65, asset rich, cash flow poor. The rich do the opposite. They usually don't buy a house until later on in their lives. They usually buy a mansion. They use every dollar they make to leverage into the stock market, real estate market. They borrow 90%, 95%, even 100% using multiple loans, buy growth assets, and then leverage themselves, and eventually they become very wealthy. You cannot save yourself to wealth, guys. You can't. Even it doesn't matter how hard you work in your life, you're going to be dead broke when you retire. That's the reality. Now, there's nothing wrong with hard work. entrepreneurs work long hours, but they work smart. They don't work hard. They're very specialized in their approach to money, and their relationship with money is very different compared to the poor. The biggest other distinction is that the rich understand the difference between good debts and bad debts. Poor people classify all debts as bad debts. And this is a cultural thing, it's a class thing, it's a conditioning factor. My parents came from Poland, and my mom, for example, she detests mortgages. The moment she paid off a house in Bentley, she was free, where investors know that paying off a house doesn't give you any guarantee of future wealth or anything. It just gives you an asset that's paid off, that's still draining your money, and it might even be going up in value, but it doesn't give you the ability, without specialized knowledge, to buy 15 properties or 10 properties or 5 properties, whatever your outcome is. So the 80-20 rule is very important to understand. And when you look at people's results, you don't see the hard work they put in. And what you've got to understand, that 20% of your actions create 80% of your results, where you focus on extends and expands. And so you've just got to choose your battles, and you've got to choose what you're exposed to. If you come home after work and watch the idiot box and then you fall asleep, well, you're not going to get far in life. You've got to come home from work, and then you've got to expose yourself to specific knowledge, information, and educate yourself or investing through podcasts, webinars, books, etc., etc. I mean, now it's so easy to access online. When I was starting out, there was nothing. When I started, there was virtually no internet. It was just early days. The biggest difference between the rich and the poor is that the poor mindset is, and you can see some of these traits in your friends perhaps, or people at work, or your colleagues. Poor people tend to talk about the old days, how in the olden days we had this, in the olden days. Well, that's all bullshit. The best time is right now, and I lived through the 80s. I was an 80s kid, so, which I believe is the best decade ever. But, the olden days, and talking about the olden days, what happens is you miss out on living in the present. And the rich live in the present, and they have control over what they do. The poor people have a fear of missing out. Rich people learn from mistakes, and they learn from the mistakes of others, which is very important. Poor people tend to think rich people are evil, or they're greedy, because otherwise they wouldn't be successful. They complain constantly. They don't like to learn, and they're professional life victims. They're always been like perturbed by someone, or they're always competing with people about how bad their life is. They're afraid of investing because everything's a risk, and they fear change. They stay in the comfort zone for the rest of their lives. Rich people help others to succeed. They don't complain. They constantly learn. They believe that they're in control of their destiny, and they change their habits, and the habits give them results, and they take action. They take action because they understand what the outcome will be through education. Now, the key is how to get educated in Australia, and which are the best property gurus. And I've read over 250 books on real estate investing and psychology in Australia. I think I've pretty much read every Australian book published up to around 2007, when I stopped reading books because it was just repetitive. But I used to read a book on average, one a week, in my 20s and 30s. And people ask me, what's the secret of your success? Well, I'll tell you what the biggest secret is. It's not even a secret. I like sharing it. You can have anything in life, but you can't have everything. And you've got to choose your battles. And you've only got so many hours in a day. So what I decided to do in my 20s, when I was working for Australian New Funds Management in financial planning, is come home, not watch the TV at all. I decided just to read the Fin Review during business hours, and just do the hour of reading every night. So from 9:30 to about 10:30, I would read for an hour. And on average, I used to get through a book in around 7 to 10 days. And I used to consume about 20, 25 books per year, depending on the complexity of the book and how hard it was to read. And that's how I've read, nearly 300 books between my 20s and 30s, which completely transformed my life. And not only did I read books on real estate investing, I'm going to share some of those books with you today, but I've read the classics like Think and Grow Rich, As a Man Thinketh, Anchors of Diamonds, How to Win Friends and Influence People, the great classics on psychology and mindset. And then also I've read specific books around property investing and psychology in Australia. And what it does is it makes me condense time, because you can't just reinvent the wheel and start everything from scratch, because there's no point, number one. Number two, it's going to take you decades to come to all these realizations. People have done this already. And so intelligent people, what they do is they learn from other people's success and model it. and then take it on board and then implement their strategies. And this saves you from wasting time, which is what most people do from A to B. They waste so many years of doing all these things that give them no results, where if you're concise and focused, you can get from A to B very quickly. And I see this all the time with my clients with property investing. Remember, the more you learn, the more you earn. And that's the fundamental key. And this is why there's so very few investors in Australia that are successful. If you look at census data, 71.6% of investors only have one investment property. Only 0.9% of investors in Australia have 6 or more investment properties, and their income has nothing to do with it. It's all psychology and mindset. Because I've met people with very low incomes, with large property portfolios. I've met people on good incomes and huge property portfolios. I've met people with very high incomes, and I'm talking about $1 million a year plus, with no property behind them, one house paid off, and they just give the ATO $350,000 every year on a silver platter with minimum deductions. I mean, that is insanity, you know? So one of the best books I can recommend, let's talk about the gurus. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You can't go, there's nothing better ever written in my life. When I read this book, I was completely transformed. It completely changed my paradigms. There was a shift internally, and I could never go back. Chapter 1 is lesson 1: the rich don't work for money. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. I mean, that's the first opening lines of the book. And this is all about psychology and mindset and making that shift between selling and trading time for money versus leveraging into growth assets using other people's money. The main difference, and I'll give you a bit of a summary just to entice you to get Rich Dad Poor Dad. If you're going to read one book in your life after finishing high school or university on mindset, this is it. Poor Dad, and it's a story of Robert Kiyosaki, who was growing up in Hawaii, and he had two fathers. He had his own father, who was an academic, who had a stable government job at a public school, and he had his best friend's rich father, who was an entrepreneur. And these are the lessons that he learned from both of them. The poor dad always said, this is basically the psychology of the rich and the poor. The rich should pay more in taxes, and the poor always want the rich to pay more in taxes. The reality is that rich people pay more in taxes than all the poor people combined. They pay billions of dollars in taxes, company taxes. They pay billions of dollars. I mean, who do you think owns all these companies? Not poor people. They work there. Elon Musk pays more tax per year than anyone listening to this YouTube channel. And he's just one person. Another fallacy is study hard so you can find a good company to work for. I'm not rich because I have children. Excuses on circumstances. Don't talk about money over dinner. Don't take risks. The biggest risk in life is not to take risks. A house is the best asset you own. Pay your bills first. I'll never be rich. And if you don't believe you'll be rich, you're going to be right. The rich that believe taxes reward those who produce, because if you're paying a large amount of taxes, if you're paying $1 million in tax, that means you must keep a lot of money as well. Study hard so you can find a good company to buy, not to work for. I must become rich because I have children. Talk about money and business over dinner. Best topics I ever talk about over my dinner is money and stock market and property. Learn to manage risk. A house is the biggest liability you own, which drains your serviceability. It's a growth asset, but it deters you from buying other assets. Pay your bills last. Pay yourself first. Invest in your psychology and mindset, and pay the bills last. I'm a rich man, and rich people don't do this. So the rich dad thinks money is power. Pay yourself first. Build businesses. Don't save, invest. And investing is a type of savings plan, because you can diversify from, stocks, crypto, right down to gold and government bonds. By the way, I'm not giving you investment advice here. Not investing is risky. That is the biggest risk in your life. If you get to 60 and you never invested anything, because just having money in a bank account, earning you 1% or 2%, and inflation's 3%, you're actually losing money. Your house is a liability. It's the biggest liability in your life. The rich are generous. They give more to charities and to other people. They give away millions of dollars. I mean, Bill Gates is going to give away virtually all his billions of dollars and leave his kids only a few $1 million. Let money work for you while you sleep. That's why I believe in leverage and property, because my money, my leverage, my portfolio makes me more money than my job. Become financial literate. That's why I wrote the book on Australian Property Finance Made Simple. Financial literacy will make you millions. Ask yourself how you can afford it, not ask yourself why you can't buy it. Make money by shopping for investments that will go up in value. Buy things that go up in value and don't buy consumable products that depreciate in value. The second book, if you want to read, is Cash Flow Quadrant, which is a phenomenal follow-up from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it talks about how you can go from the employee to the self-employed business owner and investor. Now, you want to be in the investment quadrant. That's where the money is. The good news is that a lot of employees can jump across from the employee quadrant into the investor quadrant. If you're working for a company, you're in 100 grand a year, there's nothing stopping you from investing in real estate, buying crypto, buying shares, investing in the stock market, bonds, whatever you're into. And that's the key thing. The number one way to make money is becoming a business owner, where then you can leverage the business serviceability and buying power and then invest in shares, which is the ultimate. Now, this is all cool, but it's all American and psychology based. So who's the number one property guru, in my opinion, in Australia that has more influence on anyone else in my life? It's Steve McKnight. Steve McKnight wrote the best 3 books on real estate investing, arguably, that I've ever read. And the good thing is Steve McKnight is an accountant from Melbourne, from Blackburn, who bought over 270 properties, which is incredible. I don't even know how that's possible. This was his first book that I read, which is $1 million in property in 1 year. Now, he was buying properties in Bendigo and Ballarat for $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, even cheaper ones than that. Now, this is back in, some time ago. This is probably about 20 years old now, but the fundamentals still remain the same. The thing about Stephen McKnight that I love is the clarity that he has, and he's a big fan of numbers, Excel spreadsheets, formulas. So he really takes on a non-emotional approach to investing. If you want to read a good Australian book about the market right here, and especially in Victoria, in Melbourne, Stephen McKnight is my number one to go to. 0 to 130 properties in 3.5 years, and he ended up buying 260 properties in 7 years. Now, I don't even know how it's possible to do that many contracts in 7 years' time, because you're doing a property transaction every 2 or 3 days if you think about it. So it was pretty insane effort. But he was an accountant that wasn't happy where he was, which is the story of a lot of Australians. And he did something about it. Him and David, his business partner, went out and bought enough properties to replace their income. And out of that came this whole journey. And he transitioned from an average accountant to working, having a good kind of middle-class lifestyle, into a multi-millionaire. So if you want to have, if you want my opinion on probably the number one property guru in Australia, it's definitely Stephen McKnight, and those books are definitely a must-read. Michael Yardney is a great author. He's got a company, Metropole, which has been around for a long time. In Australia, over 20 years of, really good advice. His books are fantastic. Once again, he's Australian. He's based here in Melbourne. So this is not some American guru coming over from, America telling us Australians what to do. This guy has been around for, a lot longer than I have in the property game, investing, building a large $1 million property portfolio himself. But he's also surrounded himself with really good experts. So the first book that I read from him was How to Grow a Multi-Million-Dollar Property Portfolio in Spare Time, because he really deals with professionals and people that are time poor. And they pretty much, that's what he teaches. So it's not a really active strategy where you've got to redevelop sites or get, hands dirty. It's pretty much just sourcing properties and, holding on to them. There's a lot of books that he's written since. These are the top 3 that I've read post that book, which is the Tax and Law book, which is great, and also How to Influence and Persuade, which is part of the negotiation process with real estate. So highly recommend Michael Yardney. Is a fantastic author. I've read his books multiple times. I've learned a lot from his books. He's definitely one of the people that was responsible for my success when I was much younger. Probably the third person would be Dimfna Bolholt, Confessions of a Real Estate Millionaire. It's a great book. It's a single mum, an accountant, an economist, went from broke to $3.5 million in property. And this is in Queensland. She's based in Queensland. Most of her properties are in Queensland. And she's a big fan of cash flow positive properties, which is very different to what I do. I do pretty much growth properties that are cash flow negative or neutral, where she does purely cash flow positive properties. And she's got a huge following now. She does events. She's also very good on tax, asset protection structures, and psychology and mindset. She's one of the foremost authorities in Australia on dealing with dealing with successful investors, but also what it takes to become successful as a property investor, and what kind of psychology and mindset you got to cultivate in order to become that. Her books are very detailed as well, so she's got a lot of structures and diagrams, which I really like, because a lot of these books tend to be very ambiguous in how they teach topics. So you read the book and you still don't know what the hell to do. With her information, it is literally very micro level depth, where you can know exactly what to set up, how much it costs, what it's going to do. So I quite enjoy her style of writing books, because I'm a very detailed person myself. I've got a kind of an engineering micro level brain. I want to know exactly how it works. Very Eastern European approach. I don't, if you're talking about, oh, this kind of works like this, and I want to know exactly the in and out. How does the trustee borrow the money? What kind of loans are we getting? Do I go through business banking? I want to know exactly the process. So definitely is definitely highly recommended. Others, I mean, look, there's others out there. Definitely some of the best books that I've read 20 years ago. Streets Ahead by Monique and Rob Wakeland. Great book. Melbourne Buyers Advocates. Probably Jan Summers was the original guru in Queensland from, I think, nearly 30 years from now ago, I would say. She was a primary school teacher. Ian Summers created the PIA software, which is still the industry standard software for crunching numbers on property portfolios. I still use it myself. I've been using it since I was, 25, so nearly 25 years of using the same software. So you can get her books. I don't think they're in bookshops anymore, but you can get them on eBay, and they're super cheap. I actually bought a couple of copies recently for a friend of mine for about $5 each. So highly recommend. More Wealth Through Residential Property is my best favorite book. And then Story by Story. Those stories are phenomenal. They have a lesson in each book. So they're pretty much the property gurus. And the common thing about them is, number one is, if you work with them individually, you can definitely become very wealthy. There's no question about it. If you work with Stephen McKnight, Michael Yardney, in one-on-one, they can develop an all-personalized, tailored, encompassing investment strategy. They have excellent local property knowledge. They can tell you exactly what to buy, where to buy, how much to buy. They can access off-market investment properties. They've got a whole network of people behind them, lawyers, accountants, other agents. So if you do get to work with them one-on-one, you can become very successful. The problem is you can't work with them one-on-one, okay? No matter what you do. The best you can get is a program where you're in a group or room with 30 other people. You can't, and I could be wrong completely, but as far as I know, Dimfner or Stephen McKnight do not do consulting as individuals, because they have companies and they run the company and they have consultants working with them underneath them. Same with Michael Yardney. So you'll never get Michael Yardney. And if you had Michael Yardney with you all day, you become very successful. Now, he's probably got really good consultants. I haven't met them, but they're not Michael Yardney, okay? They're employees. And there's a reason why they're employees, and there's a reason why Dimfner's Dimfner, and she has consultants behind, underneath her. And that's the reality of dealing with property gurus. So I recommend consume all the information, read all the books, attend their events, webinars, live events. You should be spending a minimum of 10% of your money per year on personal development until you get exactly where you want to be. If you're on 40 grand a year, you should spend $4,000 on seminars, webinars, personal coaching, mentoring programs. If you're on 100 grand, it's $10,000, because you know what? You're going to spend the money anyway, and you're probably going to, spend it on bullshit that you don't need, like cars and things that depreciate in value. The dumbest thing that I see in Australia, and some of you be offended, okay, is people buy a $35,000 Toyota Camry for $35,000. The moment they come out of the dealership, it's worth $25,000. The moment they drive out, it's worth $25,000, right? It just depreciates in 1 year by $10,000. And then 2 years later, it's worth $20,000 if you're lucky. Yet they won't spend $1,000 on live seminars, coaching programs, or books, or whatever they need, because it's too expensive and they can't afford it. And it's fine. That is the dumbest use of money I can imagine. No one cares about your Camry, okay? It's not a Ferrari, it's a Camry. No one goes, wow, that's a new Camry. It doesn't matter if your Camry is 5 years old, 10 years old, or 1 day old. It's a freaking Camry, okay? it's nothing, okay? So buying a new Camry, and I know the servicing story, it's going to be cheaper. Okay, the reality is you're going to be broke the rest of your life by buying new cars every 3 years. You're better off buying a second-hand car, driving that, and then having 10% of your income spent on personal development, books, and that means even taking time off work and staying at home and reading books or going to a weekend event for 4 days, immersing yourself in property investing, and then taking action. That is the way to get forward, not by buying a stupid Camry and then wondering, or a stupid Commodore, which you can't even buy anymore, or a Falcon, and I see these cars on the road. I'm thinking, like, it's a money trap. I've never bought a brand new car in my whole life, and I'm never going to. Even when I buy my Mercedes-Benz AMGs, the 1-year-old, 2-year-old cars, because they depreciate by 20 or 30% in the first year. It's the dumbest use of money. Unless I was a billionaire, I'll never do it. If you can get to the gurus, they usually have expensive mentoring programs or forecast gurus, but you can't work with them individually, and they vary between 5,000 to 45,000. And there's a bunch of them in Australia. You can research it, but you can't get one-on-one coaching with them, and that's the biggest thing. So consume their information, follow them on YouTube, read their books, but you might never be able to work with them. Now, let's look at different types of listing. Before we get into real estate agents, buyers, advocates, let's talk about different types of listings in the industry. Number one is on-the-market listings, which is properties are listed on realestate.com, Domain, and all the other websites. You got to understand one thing. This is the leftovers from the market. Anything that's on realestate.com and Domain is the tuna that John West rejected. This is not the stuff that investors, this is the last option for people or mums and dads listing their own house. Okay, but obviously most agents would have already picked through it and give, if it was any good, i.e. a subdivision potential site where you can flick it to a developer, or a corner block, or a site that has 2 blocks, all that stuff gets sold before it's even listed on realestate.com. So the second thing is pre-market advance listing. This is where an agent or an agency will be giving an exclusive listing to sell a property, but the property hasn't been advertised yet. During the time prior to advertising, usually 2 weeks, where photographs are being taken and marketing materials being prepared, the real estate agent might give a few shortlisted buyers or other agents a chance to get in first. See, real estate agents work on a small retainer, 30, 40 grand a year, and they make usually per sale 3% plus GST, and they make half of that. So if they sell $1 million property, they make $30,000, usually 15 to the house, to the licensee, 15 to the agent's rep, right? They don't want to market your property for 8 weeks, do opens, waste all this time and energy. They just want the commission, they want the sale. So and they have a list of investors and developers. This is the best agents. They've got a whole network of buyers that are waiting for very specific stock. And it could be buyers advocates waiting for specific stock, could be terrace homes in a specific street, or it could be for developers. It could be a block of land that is, let's say, 900 square meters with a 25-meter frontage. It could be specific. Everyone has specific categories of exactly what they want. And what they do is the moment they list the property from your mum and dad, seller, vendor, they'll ring their hot list and say, listen, I've just listed this property. It's not on the market yet. There's a grandmother living there. It's a 1,100 square meter block in Black Rock. It's got a 25-meter frontage, and the site next door has been redeveloped into 5 units. Do you want it? And they'll try to sell I just made this up completely, but they will try to sell the property within the first week by making specific phone calls. Not too many phone calls. And if they can't sell it, or if it's just a normal boring house with no potential to do anything with it, it would just end up on realestate.com. So don't forget these guys, that real estate and Domain are the John West rejected tuna. Okay, this is not the market. There's a whole market that never ends up listed anywhere. Now, what I deal with is off-market listings. Predominantly, it's a transaction that occurs where property hasn't been and won't likely be advertised in any way, shape, or form. The vendor doesn't want the property on the market or has established a relationship with agents to sell his property without advertising or mainstream advertising. Now, number of off-market listings. Number one, this happens a lot with celebrities. You might have movie stars, sports celebrities in Australia who've got a big mansion in Toorak, Hawthorne, and Brighton. They don't want to put it on realestate.com because you end up in the media. And when they have an open on Saturday, 10,000 people will turn up, which happened with Shane Warne's house and other properties. So what they do is they discreetly list it with a few agents. And those agents, usually those properties are very expensive. They're in the tens of millions of dollars. They usually have an auction during the week, never have any opens during the weekend. Why? because poor people have weekends off. Rich people with their own companies can turn up during the week whenever they feel like it because they usually run the show. So that's why these most expensive properties never get open on the weekend. They're always open on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and they have auctions. They don't get advertised. They just word of mouth. You don't need to put it out there. Also, families have sometimes, let's say you're an ethnic family, you're a Greek family, and you've got a house in, I don't know, mini ponds for $6 million and you want to sell it for 8. You don't want your family to know how much you're going to be selling it for, just to piss them off. Right? So you would go and sell it off market, and then everyone will be guessing. So your whole Greek family doesn't know how much you got for your big mansion in mini ponds. um, so that's another reason. The other reason is also you have developers that might not be ready to market the property yet. It might be off the plan. And this is where I work with a lot of developers in Melbourne where, let's say, for example, Corona Homes, he might be doing a development in Brighton East of 6 townhouses or 4 townhouses. He just got the plans and permits approved. There's a basic brochure and working drawings. And I might have investors that want those townhouses because they want to buy them off the plan to save money on stamp duty. And I would approach them and say, listen, Derek, you've got these 4 beautiful townhouses in Brighton East. I've got 2 investors. I want to take out the front and the back one before we even start building and breaking ground. And what he's going to say, no, stuff you, I don't want to sell them. Of course he'll say I'll sell them. And so he'll sell the first 2, get really cheap construction finance, because the more you sell off the plan, the better. And then the other 2 he might sell in the open market through local agents. So most of the properties that I source for my clients through Investors Prime Real Estate are off-market transactions. That's the tuna that John West picks up in the morning when the ship comes in at 4:30 in the morning. But you've got to be super early to get there. That's the key thing. Now, what are the major players in Australian real estate investing? So number one, you've got your traditional real estate agents, Ray White, Hocking, Stewart, Buxton. Now, these guys are good. They're not investors themselves. They have very good local knowledge, but they don't really understand the market that well. I'm going to unpack all these categories in detail. Then you got your project marketers, which you have to kind of be very careful with. Then you got developers selling their own stock from internal real estate agencies like Central Equity, Mirvac. Then you got your buyers advocates, which you definitely need to be in with, and you got to understand what they do. And this is someone you really want in your network. And then you've got your sourcing specialist, which is my company as well. So traditional real estate agents, let's unpack these categories in detail. Ray White, Harcourts, LJ Hooker, it just goes on. Bell Property, Barry Plant, Rain and Horn. They go on, there's hundreds of them. Their agents are not investors, number one. They might know the area really well, and they usually focus on a particular cluster or suburbs. They're really good to know about what's happening in this area. So they usually live in the area they sell in as well. So you might have a real estate agent living in Elwood, and he knows everything about Elwood, Ripponlea, Brighton East, Hampton, St Kilda. He knows the whole little pocket. He knows every street. If there's a petrol station coming in, or if there's a housing commission going in, he'll be able to give you specialized knowledge like no one, because they specialize in a small area or section of a major capital city, and they kind of own that space, and they usually stay there for years. So in terms of having picking their brain about streets in the suburb, which are the best streets, which are the most tightly held streets, school zones, they know everything. They know nothing about structuring, nothing about property investing or portfolios, but they're really good. Once you've honed in and identified your specific area you want to invest in, real estate agents from good real estate agencies are the best ones for you to work with. Now, bit of a thing. There's some good ones that are young as well. I used to say that all the young ones are idiots. They're not. I've actually met somebody switched on 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds that are going to be future guns. But usually the best agents are around that 45, 50. They've been doing it for 20 years. They've got a whole network. They've sold hundreds of properties in the area. So they have that practical experience that you just can't replicate as a 22-year-old who's been selling real estate for 1 year. So my advice is that if you want to work with the best agents, go to their agency, just Ray White office, go to the secretary and say, can I speak to your officer in effective control, which is the license holder? And say, hi Bob, my name is Conrad. I'm a property investor. I want to buy some properties in Elwood. Who's your number one listing agent in the agency? Because the thing is, they're going to be out all the time. They're never going to be in the office. The worst ones are in the office, sitting on social media. on Facebook. The best ones are out there because that's where the money is. There's no money in the office. All the leads, all the vendors, all the properties are outside the office. So you got to get the name and then call them and say, "Can I buy you lunch? Can I pick your brain?" And and that's why you establish these relationships. And I've done this over the years now, and I've known some agents for the last 20, 25 years in the Bayside area. So really switched on. So pros is they've got excellent local property market knowledge. They know the market back to front, especially they're localized. So if you don't know an area, you want to research it. Let's say you're living in the Bayside, you want to go to Essendon and buy some properties in Essendon. Go to local agents in Essendon, and then they'll tell you everything that's happening, where the cafes are, where new infrastructure projects are coming in, all this other stuff, or regional towns. If you don't know anything about Bendigo and you want to learn, go to Bendigo, go to the biggest real estate agency and just ask them questions. And sooner or later, you'll come across the best listing agent and they'll be able to tell you about Bendigo. So very good local knowledge. They also know the reason the vendor is selling and how motivated they are. They'll tell you, oh, they're getting divorced, or they're getting sued, or they've gone bankrupt, or they're leaving to overseas. So you can work out which vendors are motivated, and then they can give you the strategy to use to get a really good price. So they will tell you why the vendor is selling, which is really unique because I only deal with off-market properties. The vendor is the developer, and he's selling to make money. It's the same motivation every time. The lowest amount needed to buy the property. And he'll tell you which ones are, you might have people going overseas and they're already committed to another property. Let's say they're moving from Melbourne to Dubai and they've put money onto a house in Dubai and they've got to settle. And so they'll take a hit compared to someone that's just selling the house because it's an investment property, or selling it and there's no pressure on them. So you can also always use the agent in your favor as a buyer to work out why the vendor is selling, and then use that information to work out if you can get a better price for the property. The lower the price, the more equity you have in the property. They can also source future deals for you. You can say, listen, if you ever come across a property with XYZ attributes, so it could be street frontage, it could be depth of the block, it could be the zoning of the block, here's my details, call me. And they will call you. They'll say, Conrad, it's John. We spoke a year ago. I've just listed a property. Are you still in the market? It's exactly what you mentioned last time. Would you like me to send you some information about it? So it's definitely a very useful way to build relationships and for them to source properties for you. Because remember, they make commissions when they sell the property. So you have to be, as long as you're nice to them, they'll do it. And the best thing is they're free. Okay, if you're buying from a real estate agent, they get paid commissions from the vendor, so they are free for you. The cons are that they're transactionally focused, and sometimes if they need to work out how serious you are. If you're doing research and you're not in the market, they just won't give you the time of day. So transactionally focused people are very honed in. I guess they're very skilled at working out whether you're a suspect or a prospect. They're not investors themselves. Most real estate agents don't invest at all. They're transactionally focused. They have one house and that's it. Maybe one investment property, but they're not really focused, which means they know nothing about structuring or tax or, capital growth from a perspective, from an investment perspective. They have no idea about finance and structuring at all, most of them. If you start talking about structures and trusts, no idea. And also 95% of the stock they sell is owner occupied, which might not be the best stock to buy as an investor. There's a lot of suburbs in Melbourne, which could be phenomenal suburbs to live in, but they might not be good investment areas for you to hold a property for different reasons. It might be the rental yield is too low, or it's just the wrong type of area to invest in for tenants. So that's kind of the pros and cons of real estate agents. Then you got project marketing agencies, and these basically get given a project and they just sell the project. So there's Oliver Hume Real Estate Group, RPM Group, Colliers International, CBRE, Knight Frank, who are international, and they'll sit there in one project until it's sold. And the project could be a house and land estate. It could be a huge development consisting of stages. It could be 5 years in the making. It could be a high density apartment tower. It could be anything. And they'll have a specific group of agents on that project, and they'll just do one project until it's sold out, and then move on to another project and another project. So this is a very specific type of project marketing agencies that do this kind of work. All of Docklands and Southbank was sold by project marketers in Australia and overseas. They also go overseas and sell through investment shows and things like that. Most of the stock is bad. Like there's Mervic's done a couple of things like the Heath in Heatherton and Port Melbourne, And in Sydney, they've done a couple of really good projects, overlooking the Darling Harbour. But most of the project marketing stock, it's kind of average to questionable. It's usually high density. There's too many in there. It's all very investor heavy. So you're buying into a townhouse developer. There's 300 townhouses and 290 will be investors, or 200 apartments and there's going to be 190 investors. So you just got to do your research. They've got good local property market knowledge because they have really good brochures. They'll know everything about the area they're selling in. So if they're selling Doncaster, they'll know everything about Doncaster. And this is where I go to them and get those brochures and marketing material, because that company, that developer selling that stock would spend anywhere from 10 to 50 grand on getting personalized marketing kits and due diligence kits on the area. So the research they'll do, and they can even engage companies like BI Shrapnel and research houses that will do customized reporting for them. And these brochures are phenomenal. They'll give you the latest call logic data, which is Cotality now. They'll give you personalized reports from the industry standard, industry experts. So local knowledge, second to none. Project marketing companies are killers when it comes to just capturing the data really cleanly, because there's so much at stake. Good after sales support. They usually manage the property for you at the end. They'll give you depreciation schedules, all that kind of rental guarantees. It's all that kind of stuff. They have good relationship with developers and builders. They want you to come back for more. So they will look after you to some extent, depending on the company. And it's free, obviously, because they make money from selling real estate for developers. The cons are they're transactionally focused. They don't really care about you or the property. They just want to sell the apartments or houses or townhouses and get out. They got no idea usually about finance and structuring, or very limited. And they tend to focus on high density apartments or new house and land estates, which really don't perform well in Victoria, as we know. There's been very disappointing in terms of a product. Then sometimes you have developers that get so large, they actually sell their own stock and they develop their own internal real estate agencies, because it's not worth for them to outsource that, number one, and pay someone fees. Number two, they can control the culture and have more control over the agents. So Meriton, Mirvac, Central Equity, they're so large. They sell so many hundreds and thousands of properties per year. They tend to open up, their own real estate agencies and do that themselves. And there's a reason for it. Same as project marketers. Usually the stock is average to bad. I mean, Central Equity just does tiny little studio apartments, hundreds of them. There's no growth there. It's a complete disaster in Melbourne. I mean, I don't even know why they keep building in Docklands and South Bank. It's beyond me. There's 8,000 empty apartments right now in Melbourne, and no one can lease them. Completed 100%, and no one can lease them, and they don't want them. Stockland, Fraser's Property Australia, Land Lease, Goodman Group. So they're all different. Some are boutique and they sell boutique stocks. Some of them focus on like South Yarra, Toorak. But once again, it's developers selling their own stock through their own internal real estate agencies. Grab the brochures, get the education in the area. I wouldn't recommend investing with them, or, if there is an opportunity, definitely make sure you do your market research and due diligence objectively before you invest. The pros are excellent local property market knowledge. Once again, second to none. Excellent marketing material, due diligence kits, which they'll spend tens of thousands of dollars on. I've seen some of the best reports ever created on suburbs in Melbourne by developers selling their own stock, because there's so much money at stake, and they're selling 200. If you're selling one townhouse, you're going to only spend so much money on research and due diligence. If you're selling 300 townhouses, then you're going to spend much more money on the research and developing brochures for that project. Good after sales support, definitely. Good relation with developers and builders, because they want to keep you happy. Also, their reputation is important. They don't want to be in the media for the wrong reasons. If they do end up in the media for the wrong reasons, it's pretty much the end for them. So most of them will make sure that there's no negative publicity around them, because they'll jeopardize future projects. So Mirvac's got a really good reputation, for example, looking after people. You don't see a lot of negative stuff around Mirvac, in the media. It's free as well, which is cool. Transactionally focused agents, once again, no idea about finance or structuring. So, and they tend to focus on high density apartments and new house and land estates, and holiday apartments, which you want to stay away from, like a Tina Arena concert. Never buy holiday lets, guys. It's a disaster. Okay, There's nothing to be gained from that. Invest in normal properties and use the money just to go into Airbnb or a hotel and just pay for your holiday. Do not buy holiday apartments. They're a disaster. Now you got buyers advocates. Now this is the area I want to get into. These are specialized. Usually they become real estate agents, and then after 10, 20 years, they go, you know what? We're going to focus on investors. We don't want to deal with mums and dads anymore. And we're going to use our experience, like the Wakeland Property Advisory, 28 years experience in the Bayside area. And we're going to source properties for rich people and investors that are switched on and help them build their portfolios. It's a very interesting industry. I'm a buyer's advocate myself. I love doing it. It's awesome. So you have Wakeland Property Advisory, Metropole, Investor Kit. Some of them do very personalized, like Metropole's very specific about the suburbs they choose. They're very much eastern suburbs, Bayside in Melbourne. They choose and pick which suburbs they go into. Investigate will have a broad spectrum of suburbs across Australia. They've got a different approach. They're all unique. The directors of these companies pretty much determine the culture and direction of the company, and that's what they do. So some are very specific, where they'll only choose a cluster of suburbs. Some will deal with every major capital city in Australia. There's property buyers, there's national property buyers, Cohen Handler, and Australian Property Scout. There's hundreds of them, and this is one of the problems with buyers advocates. Now there's some really good ones out there. They've been around for decades. I know them personally. I know some of the best ones in Melbourne. They are super knowledgeable, and if you're lucky to work with them, half your job is done. They'll just build a whole portfolio for you. You can get a really good personalized investment strategy, and they do understand finance and structuring because they deal with investors predominantly, and they're usually investors themselves, especially the ones that are, around the 40, 50-year-old mark. They have excellent local property market knowledge in the areas they sell and source. They know exactly what's happening. They have excellent market research and due diligence material, and they also have access to other agents, whether it's project marketers to property sourcing specialists. And they can access off-market investment-grade properties. That's what they usually do. So they have a lot of properties where they'll ring agents before the listing even has taken place, and they'll say, look, I've got an investor who's looking for a terrace home in Carlton, 1.5 to 2.5, and they're happy to do a bit of a renovation, but they want a double-story 3-bedroom with rear lane access. Do you have anything on your books? No. Okay, if you do have something, ring me. I've got a buyer ready to go. That could be a conversation between a buyer's advocate and a traditional agent in Carlton, for example, Collingwood. So they do, if they're probably leased with the agent, the buyer's advocate will get that property instantly, and there'll be a transaction and a sale right then and then. The agent will pick up the full commission through, let's say it's 3% plus GST, and the buyer's advocate will charge you for sourcing the property. So buyer's advocates charge you, the investor, a fee for sourcing properties. They don't take any other commission. It's actually illegal for them. If they do, they'll lose their license. So the cons are they're somewhat transactionally focused, but they actually want you to buy a lot of properties from them. So if you're successful and you're buying 6 properties over 6 years, they'll make 6 times the transactions rather than just doing one property. So if they do a bad job, you won't come back, basically, right? Which is cool. So it's in their interest to make you successful as a property investor, because they can keep coming back to them and they'll keep charging you buyer's advocacy fees. A lot of them actually work with their clients long term, like I do, and I want my clients to get to 10 properties because it's a win-win situation. Some are not investors themselves, and this is where the problem is. There's a lot of young kids coming into the buyer's advocacy space, and they're oversaturating the industry. They're young, they're living with their parents, they've never invested in their life, they never bought one property, and they're giving advice about building property portfolios. So you've just got to be smart in who you're dealing with. And I understand everyone's young, you got to start somewhere, but you shouldn't be a buyer's advocate unless you've got at least 10 properties and you've been in the industry for 10 years. I mean, there's minimum requirements in my mind that you need to have, And look, the buyer's advocacy market is what happened in mortgage broking 20 years ago when they opened up the whole the barriers to entry and they lowered them. Where when I did my degree, it was a 2-year course to become a mortgage broker. Now it's 2 weeks online. So you have 90% of mortgage brokers dead broke, completely uninformed, relying on software with no idea about anything. You know, so it's a shame. The personal fitness and training industry is the same thing, you know. And I'll tell you now, if you're a personal trainer listening to this video, if you're a male, if you can't deadlift 200 kilos, bench 130, 150, and squat 200 kilos, you should be ashamed of yourself as a personal trainer. You need to quit your job and go back to a call center, right? Because you have no business giving people advice about fitness if you can't deadlift a minimum of 200 kilos. There's girls in Eastern Europe that are 16 that are deadlifting 250 kilos. What's your freaking excuse as a personal trainer? So, you know, if you're a personal trainer listening to this video right now, if you don't do those minimum benchmarks, get out of the industry or upskill yourself. It's the same thing with buyers advocates. You know, like how can you give advice on something you can't even do yourself? It's just bizarre, you know. So you've got to be smart. If you're listening to this as an investor, make sure you're dealing with the qualified people. And this is the thing with buyers advocates. They've got to be investors themselves. They've got to be seasoned investors with a minimum portfolio, with results themselves. And you got to ask those questions. I know it's hard. You got to pre-qualify them. You know, if you're a mortgage broker, it's the same. If you're dealing with a mortgage broker, if you're just a first-time buyer, deal with anyone. But if you want a long-term relationship, if you're an investor, your mortgage broker should be also an investor himself. You know, just makes sense. So this is the problem with the industry with buyers advocates. It's just the barriers to entry is so low now. It's oversaturated with kids that are broke, that have no idea what they're doing. Same with personal fitness industry. Kids that are broke, no idea what they're doing. You know, it's just, I don't know what. Now, hopefully some of those kids will become and get inspired. Don't email me if you're a personal trainer. I don't care. Okay, and I don't want your war story about your back being broken or some bullshit. Okay, no one cares about your war story. Come there, lift 200 kilos, get out of the industry. No basic. Some of them have no idea about structuring. Some of them actually have a banking background. I know some really good buyers advocates in Melbourne that actually came from mortgage broking, banking backgrounds before they burnt out, had a change of industry, but still wanted to be in the financial service sector. And they get into real estate, and it was just too much. And they got into buyers advocacy, which is very close to kind of mortgage broking because you're dealing one-on-one with people. So some of them have really good understanding of structuring and tax and buying properties through trust and business banking and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, if you can get a good buyer's advocate, they're worth their weight in gold. Fee structure varies from company to company, as low as 1%, as high as 3%. I've seen 4%, and you pay them for their service. They're not free. You pay them, they'll source the property for you through other agents, through open market and off market. Now, there's also investment property sourcing specialists. Now, disclaimer, I use Google to come up with these companies, and I could be wrong because I don't actually know all of them. Search Property, Pure Property Investment, House Finder, Property Buyer. These are specific companies that are set up to deal with investors, and they source properties from developers and private vendors, and builders and building companies who normally just build for owner occupiers, but for different reasons, that stock also could qualify as investment grade stock, and they offer that service to you. They can negotiate discounts, terms of settlement. They give you personalized investment plans, very extensive ones, roadmaps and tailored strategies. They have access to property selected through rigorous research. So what they do is investment property sourcing specialists do a huge amount of research and due diligence on their area that they've chosen. They have support finance and mortgage broking. So usually they have an in-house mortgage broking or external companies that can refer people to, including lawyers, accountants, and especially mortgage brokers and bankers. They also want you to build a large property portfolio and be successful. The more successful you become, the more transactions they'll do, they'll become successful as well. They also have proactive management and maximizing returns, because they usually have, it's a one-stop shop for some of them. Now, some people say this is bad, but one-stop shop could be internal and external as well. They can just refer you to a good property manager. The more rental you get, the more serviceability you get, or borrowing power, the more properties you'll be able to buy. So they want to maximize. It's an incentive for a property sourcing specialist to maximize every aspect of the transaction, because the better experience you have as an investor, if you're getting really good property, 20% below market or 10, very low stamp duty because you're getting a stamp duty discount, high depreciation, which gives you more money from the DATO, and you maximize every step right down to you're getting a very good rental yield of 5 or 6%. It's all managed for you. You're going to go to second property a lot quicker than if you're out there trying to find this whole team, by yourself. So investment property sourcing specialists and groups and companies who have that culture, they want you to become successful and they want their clients to build up large property portfolios. And it's a win-win transaction. It's also free in the sense that they can't charge you commissions because they get paid commissions from developers. However, they can charge you for anything from joining a club to a mentoring program to special seminars, webinars. There's a lot of different things they can do. Everyone's got a different approach. Cons are, they are transactionally focused, but in a good way. They want you to become successful because they make more money. If you buy 10 properties, they'll make 10 commissions. If you buy one, have a better experience, you'll never come back. Some are not investors themselves, they're employees, but some are. So you got to just weed out the ones that are there because they want to learn themselves. And they're also investors, some are not investors. They have a good to basic knowledge about finance, structuring, and tax. And they're usually free, or they charge you fees for mentoring programs, special focus groups, there's VIP clubs, all that kind of stuff. You got to do your research. I'm actually a buyer's agent and a property sourcing specialist. So people don't know this, but I run a company called Investors Prime Real Estate, which you obviously know, where I source properties. But a lot of people don't know that I actually also have a buyer's advocacy under my brand, Konrad Bobilak, where I just do buyer's advocacy in Melbourne for my clients. But you've got to, usually what I do with my clients, and this is just my methodology, let's say you come to me, you're in 100 grand a year, you're going to buy 3 properties. The first couple I'll probably do for free through my Investors Prime Real Estate business, because it's a brand new, you're probably better buying a brand new townhouse in your personal name, get the negative gearing component, so you're making it tax effective, get your tax down to 0, claim your negative gearing. Also, you get high depreciation on the property, full depreciation on fixtures and fittings, high rental yield, and no headaches for 7 years because it's brand new. Once you have no more tax benefits and you're kind of maxed out as an individual, you're getting close to maxing out, you got to buy properties through trusts, because you got to go through business banking. And once you buy a property in a trust and it's cash flow positive and it's self-sustained and you get a letter from the accountant, you can move on and get it exempt from serviceability. But because you got no more tax benefit, there's no point you buying a brand new property. You're probably better off buying a 100-year-old Victorian property in Port Melbourne, for example, that's been already depreciated. The building's over 40 years old. There's no fixtures and fittings depreciation, but you got a good land component. So you got the growth and equity because you need deposit money, and you got a good rental yield. So then you come to me, and then I'll go through. I'll help you as a buyer's advocate, because now I'm sourcing established properties, because you no longer need brand new properties. Also, I charge 3% plus GST as a buyer's advocate, where on Investors Prime Real Estate, I don't charge you anything because I get paid commissions from developers and builders where I source the properties from. And this is important because when you're starting out, you want to make sure every dollar goes the furthest. You want to spend the least amount of your money, saving money on stamp duty, getting discounts, all this kind of stuff, equity on the way in. Once you got a few properties, it doesn't make a difference. Then you're focusing on quality. And that's why I do both things in Melbourne. So Investors Prime Real Estate is a boutique specialist real estate agency. We're focused on primarily focusing on blue chip areas. It was founded in 2013 by me. And I don't have staff. I have support staff only. You deal with me directly. I don't have salespeople. I don't have other agents working with me. I just have a marketing manager, office receptionist, and a couple of support staff. So I work with clients one-on-one. That's what I love doing. I enjoy doing that myself. I've been doing it now for 13 years, and I love doing it. I'm the only investment sourcing specialist in the market that does blue chip properties only. I don't do any kind of up and coming areas. All that stuff doesn't work. I only do blue chip areas in Melbourne based on my unique 46-point due diligence criteria that I developed myself. I target the suburb first and then the developer and property. So I don't target the developer and property first. So, let's say I've identified Hawthorn, then I'll source properties in Hawthorn, I'll research Hawthorn, who are the best developers, and then I'll find properties for you. I've got access to 1,800 to 2,500 properties at any one time. I only do about 100 transactions in a year. And honestly, having 6 holidays a year, that's all I want to do. I don't actually work that hard, guys. I don't value money like I used to because I've got all my toys and houses and all that stuff. I've got the AMG Mercs and I've got the watches and all the. It doesn't give you any more happiness. When I bought my BMW 7 Series or my AMG S63, I was happy for 7 seconds, and then you park it at a shopping center and you're paranoid someone's going to scratch it. So for me now, it's time more than anything else because I'm conscious at 50 that my time is running out. So I'd rather spend time on holidays with my family than being in the office and working. Mind you, I love working as well because I need to do something, but I'm not here to build a company and have staff and do all that kind of stuff. I have no interest in that at all. I want to actually enjoy working one-on-one with clients. I have access to off-market developments that will never hit the mainstream property market or be advertised to the general public in any way, shape, or form. I negotiate very special deals or discounts on behalf of my clients, cash rebates of 10%, 10% discounts, 20% discounts when I can. Sometimes the market's hot, you can't get one discount. Sometimes you get massive discounts and incentive from developers. I reject 95% of all investment properties. Most of them are foreign occupiers. They don't make the investment grade. And also, I'm the founder, which is me. I'm an investor that happens to be a real estate agent. I was never a real estate agent, and I had no interest in the industry, to be honest with you. So I became a real estate agent because legally I need to be a real estate agent to sell property. But beyond that, I'm an investor myself. Also, I offer unbiased education through my books and online education. So you're welcome to have that access to that. There's no bias outcome there. I'm not a developer selling stock or trying to make an area look better. It is what it is, guys. I don't make these suburbs. I don't make the demographics. I just observe and invest. I have access to house and land packages. A lot of people say, "Oh, you don't like house and land because you just don't have any to sell." Well, I do actually. If you want to buy Trigonina, Tarneit, Point Cook, I've got every estate that Metricon sells in because I have a friend who works for Metricon in their off the plane Duloc division. I do develop, so I have house and land, apartments. I have off the plan detached houses in established suburbs, off the plan townhouses, and off the plan apartments. Prices range from $795 for the cheapest property, which is a 2-bedroom townhouse in Heidelberg Heights, up to $6.99 million in Hawthorn and Baldwin, where you get a ridiculous mansion, French provincial mansion on the block with underground car parks. Here's some examples of properties that I source for my clients. I won't go through the cheapest and most expensive, just the mid-range, just about $1 million now in Melbourne, just to give you an idea of what's possible. This is a property that I sourced in Oakley South, 10 Elvina Street. It was a townhouse for $838,000 off the plan. And it was a house on land. It's a townhouse, but it's actually technically a house on land. 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 2-car garage. Purchase was $838,000 off the plan. Took over 12 months to build. Deposit was 10%. Settlement date was September 22. Current valuation by Loans Australia was done for 1.315 in July 25. There was 477,000 in equity, which is ridiculous. So this particular client of mine took the equity and she bought other properties with it. That's a 56.92% gain. And I did around 15 properties in the Oakley South that are very similar to this when it was really cheap. So I identified Oakley South as the #1 area back then, and I just went and researched the crap out of it. I went to every developer in Oakley South. This is a development in Essendon that I sourced for my clients. It's a townhouse, $1,045,000. Townhouse 6, 8 to 10 Lincoln Road, called the Lincoln Collection, the developer's Branson Group. In Essendon, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, 2-car garage. Sale price was $1,045,000. Deposit was 10%, $104,500. Settlement date was September 22, and they resold the property in December 23 for 1.25, made $205,000. Cool return, 19.6%, and the market was crap in Melbourne. The market for the last 5 years, since 2001, just sideways down. The bottom was 22, and then now it's recovered, but it's still negative. It's still going sideways. So I can still make money in a market that's going really bad. Imagine what happens when the market actually starts booming with my skill set. I mean, it's it's game over. Townhouse 5, number 7, Overman Court, Essendon, 945. So this is also a development that was just purchased and revalued, equity released. 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, double lock-up garage. Purchase price 995. 10% deposit 90,500. Settlement was October 2019. Current valuation 1.185, and valuation date was December 21. When it says current valuation, it just means it was valued later on in 21 December, which is practically 22, and they had $190,000 in equity. And they borrowed against the equity to go again. That's a 19.10% gain in a market that was negative. This is a more recent property in Morotai Crescent, Heidelberg West, off the plan purchase townhouse, 899,000. It settled, so this was purchase price 995. Deposit was 10%, 99,500. Settlement day was December 22. It took about 12 months to build, give or take a month. Current valuation 1.1, and that's in December 25, just last year. 205,000 gain, 20.6%. I can just go on with examples. They're the kind of properties that I source, in terms of what I do. Melbourne's about to be booming. And this is the thing. It's 25, 26. There's specific areas in Melbourne that are going to be booming. This is from Herentals White Valuers, which is a monthly review residential newsletter they create. Melbourne now is in a state of recovery. No one knows exactly when it's going to recover, but this is the property clock. It's around about 7, 8 o'clock on the property clock going into the rising market. So this is the time where you want to buy specific areas in Melbourne and position yourself to take advantage of this massive growth we're about to have in Melbourne. Not every suburb will go up. Melbourne's very fragmented demographically. Some areas will go up a lot. Some areas will go up double-digit growth. Some areas will stagnate. Some areas will go backwards. There are markets in Melbourne that are oversaturated with house and land and apartments to the point where there's been no growth over 10 years. And I talk about them openly in my YouTube channel, so you just got to watch some of my videos. Yes, it's always the best time to buy at the bottom of the market, but long-term, it makes no difference at all. You just want to focus on quality of the asset. Definitely, yes, the bottom is always the best. And this is a newsletter that I sent to my private clients. Dear fellow property investors, this is where we are right now. Bottom of the market. This is it. Buy now. This is the bottom. I've called the bottom many times in Melbourne. And if you bought at the bottom, it's nice, you'll make more equity. Over 10 years, it doesn't make any difference at all. I love to tell you this is the most important part of investing. It's not. The most important part of investing is consistency over a long period of time. Sometimes you overpay, sometimes you pay at market, sometimes you buy below market with equity built in. It doesn't make any difference long term. It's about quality over quantity. The market is always going to be going up as long as there's a deficit of future stock coming onto the market. And we have an inequality between supply and demand. We have more people coming in, where labor's not building anywhere near the focus amount of properties we should be developing every year. But it's in the tens of thousands of deficit every year. And they keep opening up the floodgates for mass migration without any properties to look after them. So that market's not going to slow down anytime soon. It's an upward trending market. Short term, is there going to be volatility? Absolutely. Are there going to be times where you have negative equity as an investor? Absolutely. There's going to be times where you buy a property for 600, it goes down to 550 on paper, but it's a paper loss. You don't sell at 550. You keep holding through the lows, and it's a long-term view. Properties always 10 to 20 years, guys, never 3 to 5. Melbourne suburbs where houses values rose the most over 20 years. This is what I always teach. Forget about short-term volatility. Q East, 20-year growth, 349.5%. Bonnybrook, you just got to be careful with regional towns or cow paddocks that are subdivided, because if you got a farm and a couple of houses, you have huge growth, but really it's not real growth. It's actually a farm getting rezoning to residential and then building residential houses. Forget about Donnybrook. Bolwood, 324.2%. Bolwood North, 315.8%. Forget about Donnybrook and Cobblebank. Okay, nothing's going to happen there. Mickleham, one of the worst areas in Melbourne to invest in. St Kilda, fantastic, 288.6%. Balaclava, 283.7. Notting Hill, great, 279.6. Dippendee, Surrey Hills, Camberwell, Doncaster East, fantastic. Calacolo, forget about it. Hawthorn East, Hawthorn, probably the top 5 suburb in Melbourne. Ashburton, phenomenal. Essendon North, great. Kew, top 50 suburb. Hampton East, Mount Waverley, Glen Iris, Canterbury, etc., etc. So this is the areas that I focus on. My methodology, both as a buyer's advocate and as a property sourcing specialist, is focused on quality over quantity, long-term growth assets in blue chip areas. I don't go for hotspots. I don't go for anything shiny that's, that everyone is spruiking at the moment. I go for the fundamentals behind suburbs, and I'm always buying properties in really good established suburbs for my clients. Doesn't matter if it's an apartment or townhouse or a detached house. Whatever the budget is, you can still buy a property. Remember, one bedders in Toorak are selling for $350,000. You don't need $10 million to buy in Toorak. But it's about quality over quantity. Remember, the Aussie Home Loans report recently stated that by 2043, the median price in Melbourne will reach 5.8 million. It's $1 million now. And so in less than 20 years, we're going to reach 5.8 million in median price. What are you going to do about it, guys? Are you going to be part of it, or are you going to be watching it on the sidelines? Remember, Bitcoin was selling for 1,000, then 5,000, then 10,000, then 100,000, then 150,000. Did you jump in, or did you watch it go all the way? And it's going to go to 1 million, with or without you, because all the fund managers are going in now. BlackRock, all the major players are going in. Just a matter of time. So remember, the property market, whether it's just going to happen with or without you. And my advice to you is get the education from the gurus, be very savvy with who you work with long term, pick the good buyers advocate or sourcing specialists, use the agents for the local knowledge, use the project marketers for due diligence kits, get as much information exposure to different strategies, pick the one that resonates with you, and then just put your blinkers on and go in niche for 10 years, and you'll become very wealthy. That's my advice based on 30 years of investing. So if you're interested in learning more, by the way, I hope you enjoyed this video. I did go over time a little bit, but if you're interested in learning more, I do run live events from time to time. I'm having one next event in Melbourne in a month or so. You can check out by going to realestatefasttrack.com.au. It's a 2-day event where we talk about how to build and structure a large property portfolio from scratch. We talk about the hotspots in Melbourne, areas to avoid, difference between house and land, townhouse, apartments, different investment strategies, and also a lot of stuff on lending. It's virtually half a day just on lending and how to structure a property portfolio correctly, how to pre-qualify good property managers. A lot of mistakes that investors make that cost them decades of frustration or structures that are not maximizing their situation. Tickets are $47, and you also get a hard copy of my book, which is kind of like a manual for the event, Australian Real Estate Investing Made Simple. So I look forward to meeting you at the event. If you do turn up, it's going to be well worth your while. We don't make any money out of the event. The $47 ticket just covers food and the book. But we do work with clients one-on-one. Also, for those of you who can't make the event, definitely I encourage you guys, if you want to work with me one-on-one, if what I tell you resonates with you, if you want someone to help you with your property portfolio, especially if you're a time poor professional and you want someone just to do the hard lifting for you, then definitely book in for a free strategy session with myself, which is a 60-minute strategy on Zoom, where I'll go through your situation, I'll work out where you are, where you want to be, and I'll develop an action plan. And you walk away with a real written plan. You know exactly what to do, who to go to. Remember, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And most people spend so much time wasting time, going from A to B and wasting decades. We can just do it in a number of years and fast track your results. Remember, guys, the biggest asset you have in your life is time. And it's a non-renewable asset. You can always have more money. You can't get more time. Time is always running out. So you get an hour consultation on Zoom with me, or you can come to my St Kilda office and grab a coffee with me across the road, and we can go through your situation, whatever you like. I'll give you all my contacts if you don't have a good broker, banker, conveyancer, solicitor. I've got all the experts in Melbourne that you ever need to put a property portfolio together for you. So no issues there. and you walk away with the real strategy and clarity. It's a step-by-step blueprint on how to build your property portfolio, starting from the first property and what you should be focusing on and going after that. Now, to qualify for the strategy session, you need to have a minimum criteria income of about $95,000 per year, or a pre-approval for $700,000 purchase. I actually don't have any properties below $700,000 at all. Most of them, the cheapest probably I've recently had was $795,000. But I will have stock coming on in the future for $700,000, and you need about $112,000 in equity. If you're a couple, you need to be in that $120,000, $140,000 per year, or get a pre-approval for $700,000. Most properties that I've sourced around the $1 million mark, 1 million, 1.2, 1.4, which is like an average townhouse in Melbourne. So if you do want to have a session with me, feel free to drop me an email directly, conrad@investorsprime.com.au, or just hit the QR code, or just scroll down below and click a link, and we can catch up and book in a mutually convenient time. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. This is Konrad Bobilak. Thank you very much for tuning in, and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the inside.